All right, my friends, welcome to another Let's Talk with the Doc. I am excited to be here. It's another Wednesday, and I have another live guest, and I'm excited about it. And I know every week I say it like I scratch record, like every time I come, I have a guest, and I'm excited about it. And this is no exception. As a matter of fact, you will find out later what I'm really saying because I have Dr. Michael Ferris with me, who is a potter and he has a ministry of pottery that presents the gospel and hope and healing to the believers.
Mhm.
Fascinating story. I can't wait to hear how did this happen. So when I come back, I'm going to be talking to Dr. Michael Ferris. Stay there, my friends. ORB Ministry presents Let's Talk with the Doc. Grace Without Borders podcast. A thought for you. Ask Pastor. And a whole lot more. You never know what's next or who will join the conversation. All right, my friends, here we are. Here we are. And here I am with Dr. Michael Ferris, and I'm excited to have him. Dr. Ferris, welcome and good to have you on Let's Talk with the Doc.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Doc. It's good to be here. It's good to talk with you.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited. And as I said before we started, before I introduced you, this man, I'm going to call him this minister, has and a unique is an understatement.
Mm.
And you will find out for yourself a unique ministry of how he put the potter and the clay into perspective. Before we get to the ministry part of it, we want to get to know a little bit about the man. How did he get there? So, tell me something about yourself, Dr. Ferris. Tell us where, those who don't know who is Dr. Ferris, where were you born? What was it like in childhood days? Family dynamics, Christian journey, when and where and how, give us as much as you want to and
Okay.
don't tell us as much as you don't want to.
Okay. Okay. It sounds like you want quite a bit. So,
Well,
so
the gate is open. So,
all right. Well, so I was born and raised in White Plains, New York.
oh, really?
Yes.
Oh,
And so that's where I grew up there. And you know the the first 20 years of my life were very sad,
hmm.
very unfortunate. My mother ran away when I was 15,
Oh, see,
and yeah,
that's where stories that's where
yeah.
stories start, right?
Well, yeah, that's a pretty big part of it there,
Yeah.
and my father wasn't really interested, in being a father. And I have two sisters, a younger sister and older sister. We're all 2 years apart, and we really just kind of grew up in the street.
Grew up in the
And
street.
yes, yes, and so I went into the military when I was 19, and I went into the military to get off the street.
Wow.
Because between 15 and 19, the way I got most of the meals that I ate, I stole them. And
Oh my goodness.
yeah, it was very sad. I've as working that through, and your adult life, I've cried a lot of tears over that. And but that was all part of my trajectory, because my heart was pretty hard. And I went into the military, went into the Navy when I was 19, and I went to get off the street. My friends at the time, the people that I hung out with, they were either going to jail or going to the cemetery, and
Oh,
I didn't want to go to either one of those places. but you grow up in this kind of context. You have nobody to guide you, and it's like, how do you grow up?
I, I'm,
Like,
I'm, I don't want to break you, but I'm a little curious
sure.
about the earlier because now on the street, you say when you're 15, what was it like before that? Young boy growing up, siblings. What was it like? What was the environment like? How did you get to that point where mother, father not that interested, and then you're left alone, loose on the street? How did it, grow into that?
Okay, so when I was around 11, 12, I don't know if you're familiar, you're from New York, you're Scarsdale, the Scarsdale
I know
area.
Scottsdale, yes.
Okay, so we were driving down Main Street there in Scarsdale, and there was I saw some people riding a horse. There was a riding stable right off the main street in Scarsdale. And as a young boy, I saw the horse, was very intrigued by it, and I said, I would like to ride a horse. I want to try that. And my parents, they did not know how to be parents.
Mm,
It was just really, really unfortunate. And so um, I said, can I ride a horse? And they said, well, if you find a place to ride a horse, and if you can save your money, we'll take you, thinking that I would never find a place or save the money. And so I did find a place. It was in Terrytown.
I know
And
Tarrytown too. That's outside of, yeah.
okay, so we're, we're in the same neighborhood.
I know almost all the White Plains around Westchester.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. And so I found a place there. It was right in the Pleasantville area, Terrytown. It bordered the Rockefellers estate that's down there. And I saved up some money. I would cash in cans I'd find on the street, collect cans, do little odd jobs.
Wow.
And so I saved enough money to go ride a horse, right? So one of my parents brought me to this stable, and I rode a horse, and I really liked it, and I wanted to do it again, but I knew I couldn't afford to do it again. And so I went to the owner of the stable there, and I said, I'd really like to do this again, but I just can't afford it. It took me so long to collect this money.
So the
Can
money that you were collecting was just to get the ride.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 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 It was $5.
Oh.
Okay, now it's like 150. So it was $5.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
and so I said to the owner, can I work it off? Can I work for you for like a day and then ride? And so they said, sure. And so I would get there on a Saturday, have one of my parents drop me off, and I would work all day at just mucking out the stables, the stalls for the horses, and they had 70 thoroughbred horses. This
Whoa.
was kind of a opulent place, a lot of like movie stars and a lot of money from New York, and um, I just shoveled manure, and
So that was an ancient of days of White Plains because there's nothing like that in White Plains now.
well, this was in Pleasantville.
Pleasantville. Okay. Okay. All right.
Okay,
Okay.
so this was in Pleasantville,
Okay.
and so yeah, so and then I would ride at the end of the day. I'd get to ride a horse at the end of the day, and so then I would come back the next day on a Sunday. And after a few weeks of doing that, my parents didn't want to do that anymore. And so I would hitchhike there. I'd leave early in the morning. I'd hitchhike,
Wow.
right? And then the owner saw that, and so he said he would pick me up. They'd send somebody to pick me up at my house. So they started to pick me up, and then it was like, well, instead of us picking you up Saturday and bringing you home Saturday night and picking you up Sunday, we have a little room up in the hayloft. Why don't we pick you up Friday, and you can sleep in the hayloft, and then we'll bring you home Sunday. And so I started to do that. And then when the summertime came, they would just pick me up at the end of school, and I stay the whole summer there.
So
And
what age were you that time?
12,
12.
yeah,
Wow.
12. So 12 right through 19. So I just pretty much would live there and go out at night into the streets. the room that I had was very small and it was infested with rats.
Wow.
And so they would wake me up at night, crawling over me on the bed, and it was just very tragic. And so, yeah, my parents were very absent, and so that was it. My
So
sisters were out.
they weren't checking you out, finding out what you were doing. They just let it go.
Yes, yeah,
At
it
12,
was.
they just let it go.
Yes, yeah, it was very sad. They were very irresponsible, and their attitude, I think, was, "Hey, somebody else has got him." And I was what you would call, I don't know what they call them now, but when I was a young man, they called them juvenile delinquents.
Hmm.
So I was like a juvenile delinquent, and we fought a lot. I grew up in the '60s. We fought a lot. We fought just all the time, and so it was a very unfortunate upbringing. So at 19, I thought, I'm going nowhere. My friends are dying. They're going to jail. I don't want to go to any of these places. But how do you grow up? How do you get more? How do you know, I didn't know how to do it, but I was a pretty tough kid. And so I went into the military. I went into the Navy. And when I was in the Navy, I went up to the Great Lakes. That's where I did my training. The UDT SEAL team came out to the Great Lakes to do tryouts for the underwater Navy, men that would be interested in being in the underwater Navy. So I tried out. 400 men tried out for that program, and they chose 4 men.
Wow.
So they choose one out of 100.
Wow.
And so they chose me. I was one they chose. So I had a lot of privilege right at
Wow.
right at the beginning. And so then I went out to California for training. And so I was uh, being interviewed. Once you go through this training, then you'd go out to the diving facility where they train divers out in California, and then they would thin you out again. So they would get this small core group of people. And so then I was being interviewed by the director of the diving program, and he was the highest decorated SEAL in the Vietnam War. And so he said to me, basically, he said, Mike, when you get to this level, you can pretty much write your ticket. He said, what do you want to do? In the underwater Navy, what do you want to do? Because there's different programs, there's like
Hmm. Hmm.
underwater demolitions, there's sea, air, and land, there's all different things. And I said to him, I want to be under the water as much as possible. And he just kind of thought it was odd. He goes, well, why is that? I said, because I don't like people,
Wow.
and I don't want to be around people. So he goes, we're going to make you a deep sea diver. And
So,
so I became.
what was your motive, or what caused you not to make that be your preference? I don't like people. How did you get to that point? Was it that you just don't want to be on the street? Was it fear? Was it what? What was it?
Oh no, there was no fear. It was, people hurt you. The world was a violent place, and I suffered a lot of abuse, and just fighting, and you just learn, the street teaches you not to trust people.
Mm,
You don't trust people, and everybody has a motive or an agenda, and you just learn that. So it's all self-preservation. And so I was
wow.
I had a I'm not the same man now that I was then.
No, we
I,
know that, because for those who are watching, we're gonna get to the best part of this man's life.
okay.
We're just getting there. So hang in there.
So yes, I was the kind of person that you just stay away from. You meet people, and sometimes you say, just stay away from that person. You don't even know them, but their countenance, the way they hold themselves, it was. I was somebody who would just want to leave alone. Never back down from a threat or a fight, and it was just always quick. You just have to be that way in the street to survive, right?
Mhm.
And so, yeah, as a young person at the barn, it was very lonely, very alone, and I used to steal food. I would eat the animal food there. I had
Oh
nobody.
no.
Yeah, it was tragic. It was really tragic. And I remember I'd see people at the end of the day, they would drive home, and I used to just sort of fantasize, daydream what it would be like to have a family, to go home and sit at a
Wow.
table and eat hot
What?
food. Yeah. Yes. So one of the maxims you learn as a young person, at least, me growing up, was only the strong survive. That was,
Wow.
and so you just had to be fearless. And the interesting thing is, to be a diver, at least back then, I don't know how it is now, but you can't be afraid.
Hmm.
They teach you not to be afraid. And it's an interesting thing. Like, see, somebody who fears nothing is somebody who loves nothing.
Wow.
And so that's how I was. So
So
I was
during this time, did you have any contact with your family, parents, anybody in your family know where you were, what was happening?
one time got very hurt, injured, from where I was working.
Oh.
And I think the owner, for fear of liability, wanted my my parents to know. So somebody brought me, I say, to my parents' house, because I don't call it my home, because that wasn't a home. And they brought me inside, and I remember my mother watching TV, and they came over to her and they said, your son was hurt. And she just said, she didn't want to be bothered. And so I remember just walking out of the house, and the person who brought me there got into the car and they just started crying. And so they were crying, but I was not.
Whew.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've got stories that are very sad. No, not worth revisiting, but they're just painful seasons, those painful episodes that you have when your parents are abusive and things like
Hmm.
that. So
Wow.
anyway,
Uh,
so
you,
anyway,
you could never judge a book by its cover,
no, you
right?
can't.
Nobody
No.
could look at Dr. Ferris now, a profound preacher and presenter, demonstrator of the gospel in pottery. My friends, I'm just saying you got to hang in there because you got to hear this man's story and how he get to becoming a potter and a preacher potter. This is going to be interesting. So hang in there. Let's
Okay.
take it. Keep
All
going.
right. So um I'm being trained to be a deep sea diver. And let me show you a picture. I don't know if you can see it, but this would be me. I don't know if you can see this. This is me
I
here.
can see that like an astronaut.
Yeah, that's a deep
Wow.
sea helmet. That
Wow.
helmet weighs 73 pounds, and the weight belt that goes around it is 75 pounds, and that hangs on your shoulder. So you've got 150 pounds sitting there on your shoulders. So
So what a deep sea diver do? Because I've been thinking like submarine thing, but you're diving. What a deep sea soldier or marine do?
they do all sorts of things. They're all classified things, but they
Okay.
do all sorts of things. Whatever needs to be done, they do it. So
Okay. How long can you stay underwater with that? How like you have all the oxygen. How long can you stay down?
well, that's umbilically supplied. The longest you could stay down as long as you need to stay down.
Really?
Yeah. So the longest I was ever down was 11 hours and 20 minutes.
11 hours and 20 minutes.
Yes, but you can stay down for days if you needed to, and saturation divers do, but that's another story.
Oh my good
So
lord.
yes. Okay, so I'm training now. My mother's parents immigrated into the United States from Italy.
Okay.
And my father's, one was English, one was Irish. I don't really know anything. I knew who they were, but I don't know anything about their life. But Italian families, um, they're close in a sense. They interact a lot. So um, when I was young, I always grew up Italian that way. Now, to be Italian, you have to be Catholic. Like,
Okay.
that's just part of the DNA, right? If you're Italian, you're Catholic. And so I had that understanding that there was God.
Okay.
Not practicing, went to church as a young boy. They bring me to church, but so I went to the Catholic Church as a young boy, and so I knew this idea of God, but never knew anything about being born again or relationship. It was just dead religion. But I was always interested. Now, in the military, there's lots of people of faith in the military, all different kinds of faith, not
Hmm.
Christian faith or Jewish faith. I mean, there's faiths you never even heard of in the military, right? People from all over. So I was interested. I would always talk to people about their God or their religion, and just kind of interesting. And I met this fellow who was a born again Christian, and he would talk to me about Jesus, and being Catholic, I knew of Jesus. And so I would ask him questions, and he would share the whole plan of salvation. He talked to me about being a sinner, and being a sinner meant nothing to me. It was like, you're Italian and you're a sinner. It's like I had no conviction. My heart was so hard. Sin
Wow.
sin was nothing, right? So he used to bring me to this one church, and they used to have a potluck. So I used to go for the food. They do a potluck, and then they'd have like a college age Bible study. And so this fellow would share the gospel with me, and then he would bring me to this place where he would press me, to accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. And I would always shut him down. I would always not interested, not interested. So one day we're driving back to the base. He was a military man. We're driving back to the base. And he said to me, Mike, if we were killed in a car accident right now, where do you think you would go? And I knew he was trying to set me up, right? He was trying to just manipulate me.
Mhm.
And so I wasn't going to give it to him. And I said, I think I'd go to heaven. And he said, you think you'd go to heaven? And I said, I think I stand just as good a chance as anybody else. I think I go to heaven. He said, well, my Bible, he says, well, I know I'll go to heaven. He says, my Bible says, by this, you have eternal life. He said, you only think, and that's not good enough for me. I said, well, it's good enough for me. And I shut him down.
What
So
you think? What you think made you as hard as you were?
what made me so hard?
As hard as you were in terms of resisting? Was it because how was it the street life? Was it the family life?
Oh yeah, all of the above.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just don't trust anybody. You don't trust anybody. You grow up in the street, you just don't trust anybody. And so you don't even trust God. I mean, really, your heart is so hard, right? And so later on that week, I was in a diving operation, and I was wearing this,
Hmm.
and I was in an underwater accident, and I ended up being buried alive in that suit.
Really,
And yeah, there's lots of environmental hazards under the water. You People don't see them, because when you look at the water, all you do is see just
the
the
surface,
flat water.
the beauty of the surface.
Yeah, but under the water, there's mountains and valleys, and
Yep.
all
Caves and holes and
all that
rocks.
stuff. Yeah, and so there was like a landslide underwater, and I went tumbling down. And there's a protocol when things like that happen. Now, when you're underwater and you're wearing this particular suit is called the Mark V. That's what it's called. This suit. This is called the Mark V. I don't think they use it anymore,
Mhm.
because you know technology, things have progressed now. I think everything is fiberglass and lightweight. But uh, the air comes into your helmet, and you regulate that. It comes in on one side of your helmet, and you regulate that by a valve on your side, and it exhausts out the back of your helmet. So all the air is in your helmet where you're breathing. Now, these suits, they get holes in them. They're dry suits. You wear long underwear, and they put the suit on you, and then they put the helmet on you, and you've got the air in your helmet. The suits, they get little holes in them, and they torn. But when you're under the water, as you're going down, there's pressure right under the water. And so the pressure squeezes the suit around your body. So any of the little holes, they just kind of get squeezed off, and it's relatively dry.
Mhm.
When I went tumbling down in this landslide, because I'm so heavy, I went down head first into the mud, and the mud came over me. Now, under the water, there's no gravity. They train astronauts underwater because there's no gravity. When you're under the mud, there's no light. So you have no gravity and you have no light. It's darker than dark. You don't even know what dark is until you've been buried alive under the water. It is,
Mhm.
you have your eyes wide open, and yet it's just pitch black. but there's no orientation. So you might think this way is up, but that way is up.
Wow.
And so everywhere I'm pushing is just mud, and I can't push myself out. So you have a transmitter and receiver in your helmet, so you can talk to the people up on the surface. And so there's a protocol when something like this happens, so they know I had fallen down. My what's called your lifeline and umbilical, it was caught on something, so they couldn't pull me out. And I was a couple of hundred yards.
Oh man.
Yeah, I was a couple hundred yards from the diving platform. Okay, so I'm waiting, just laying there waiting for a standby diver to come in and help get me out. But because I was at an incline like this, because it's 150 pounds on your shoulders, so you're going down into the mud head first. The air that would normally exhaust out of the back of my helmet was filtering into my suit, and it was pushing my suit away from my body, and
Oh man,
and
goodness.
it was opening up these holes, and
Oh
now
no.
yeah now water starts to leak into my suit, and I feel it running down my spine, and it starts dripping off the side of my face. Okay, so this is 911 now. This is very dangerous because when divers die underwater, most of the time they drowned in their equipment.
Hmm.
Okay, so now I tell topside that I've got water coming into my helmet. So they want to keep me talking now, and there's compressed air coming into my helmet. So it's not.
Did they know where to find you
Oh
exactly?
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah,
They
because
know
I'm
where to
umbilically
find you.
supplied. Yeah, I have
Okay,
a
okay, okay,
right.
okay, okay.
So you've got compressed air coming into your helmet, and it makes a sound like just like compressed air if you're filling up the air in your tire. So I've got this sound coming into my helmet, and they want to keep me talking because what they're doing is they're timing it because can you see this little round thing right here?
Hmm.
Okay, that's a transmitter and a receiver. So when we lose communications, they'll know where that water is in relation to my nose and my mouth, and they'll
Mm.
know how much more time they have to get me out before I drown. So they're keeping me talking. So I hear the communications, the compressed air coming into the helmet. And then all of a sudden, it was like somebody flipped a switch and everything stopped. Completely silent. I heard no more talking, no more air coming into my helmet. And I thought what happened was there was an explosion and I was killed. And one of the things they would teach us in training is that if you die underwater, if you drowned underwater, you inhale, your lungs are going to fill up with water, your heart's going to stop beating, but you're going to have 3 minutes of oxygen left in your brain, and that's going to get absorbed into your brain. So if the visibility is clear, you'll have cognitive function. You'll know you have drowned, and it's just going to be a matter of 3 minutes, and you'll fade out of consciousness, just like you're turning down a dimmer switch in your house, right? So I got water coming into my helmet. I'm waiting for them to come and get me out. The air is coming into my helmet. They're constantly talking. And then all of a sudden, it's like it flipped a switch. Everything went silent. And I thought there was an explosion and I was killed. I've got 3 minutes left and I'll be dead. And as I'm sitting there in darkness with, I can't describe it, uh, Orville. It's like I had no sensation of my body. I couldn't feel my body. I was just conscious that I was conscious. It's so dark I don't see anything. I'm just conscious that I'm conscious. And in that moment of silence, I heard an audible voice. And it was just very matter of fact. It was not spooky, nothing weird. It was just very calm. And it simply said this: "Where do you think you're going to go now?" And I knew that was God.
Wow.
And I wasn't so arrogant.
Whew.
And I said, "I don't know. But if you
Wow.
but if you get me out of this mess." Did you ever pray a prayer like that? You get yourself into trouble and all of a sudden you get religion. And it's like I said, "I don't know, but if you get me out of this mess, I promise I'll find out what I need to know where I will go." As soon as I said that, air is back on, they're still talking. It's like it never stopped.
Really?
Yeah, it was like God suspended time. And so just to get my attention, but Orville, that's how hard my heart was. That's what it took. I mean, you talk about having a
So you
heart
got
of
to take
stone.
you under the mud of the 200 feet under the water to convince you
Yeah.
of
When
a
I read
relationship with him that really matters.
when I read that psalm that says he brought me up out of the miry pit and set my feet on the rock, that's literal for me. That's a literal thing for me. So anyway, I didn't drown, so I got extricated. That night, I went downtown San Diego and I walked up to complete strangers and I'd say, "Hey, what's your religion? I'm looking for God. What's your religion? I'm looking for God." I started talking to everybody, started interviewing people, all these people with different religions that I knew in the military. I'd sit down with them and I'd ask them about their religion, what they believed. I'd hammer them. And I had a little New Testament that the Salvation Army gave me. I enlisted under the Verrazano Bridge. I got on the bus under the Verrazano Bridge downtown. And as you're getting on the bus, there was a little woman there with her Salvation Army uniform on, and she had a wicker basket filled with those little New Testament, little Gideon New Testaments.
Mhm.
And as the guys are getting on the bus, she's holding them out if anybody would take one. Some people would take them, some wouldn't. But when you're poor, like I was, you take anything, right? You're gonna sell it, you're gonna do something, but you take it. So I took it and I dug it out of my locker. I read it, but I couldn't understand it. It was in King James, and it didn't make sense to me. Uh, the only thing that I read that really scared me was it said I was going to get divers diseases, and I thought, oh my goodness, yeah, yeah. So you can appreciate that.
Oh,
So it's
but diverse diseases are diverse diseases.
spelled the same way, and so and so and and here I am. I'm a diver, right?
Oh
And
my God.
I'm
Oh
thinking, I'm
my
a
God.
diver. How does it know I'm going to get diver's diseases? I'm a diver. Okay. So
Oh my good Lord.
so I started going to the library. I mean, I couldn't make sense out of it, with the these and thous and the King James. So I put it back in the locker. I went to the library on base every night. I'm talking like for several months, reading books on world religions, philosophies. Nothing was working for me. Nothing had that hook. And I remember the evening, I just sat back and was so frustrated. I took a book and I flung it across the table. And I said, nothing is working. And then I heard this little voice, what about Jesus? And I thought, I'm Catholic, I'm Italian. I know about Jesus. No, no. What about Jesus? And I thought, where do you get a book on Jesus? I didn't know they had books on Jesus. I thought the Bible was the only book on Jesus. Christian music, the only Christian song I thought I knew at that time was Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. I mean, I didn't even think God came to New York. It's like not where I grew up. And so I thought,
Wow.
where to get a book on Jesus? And I thought, when all else fails, you go to the World Book Encyclopedia. So I went to the World Book Encyclopedia, C for Christ. And I got the World Book and I was reading it. It said everything Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Acts said about Jesus. And for the first time, I'm sitting there and I'm getting revelation, like Holy Ghost revelation, that Jesus was a real man. You see, I thought like Greek people had Mercury, Apollos, Eros, Zeus, and Italian people, we had Jesus. He was just like mythology.
Hmm.
But it's like, no, the World Book Encyclopedia is saying he's a real man in history, like Alexander the Great, Napoleon. Jesus left footprints on the earth. And that drew me in. And I started reading about the life of Jesus. And I thought, if what this is saying is true, Jesus boasts one thing that no other religious leader boasts. You see, the Bible is an ancient Middle Eastern book.
Mhm.
And if you've read any of the other Eastern philosophies, there's a lot of overlap. There's a lot of similarity. But Jesus is boasting one thing that no other religious person can boast, and that was the empty tomb. He's the only one who has one. And I thought, if this is true, if this is really true, that Jesus really rose from the dead, then there's something transcendent about Christ. And that's what I want for my life, because I need all the help I can get. I want transcendence. And so I put everything else aside and I started to pursue Jesus. I found every born again Christian I could find, and I would hammer them with questions. I'd back them into a corner. They would run when they started to see me coming, because they just knew I was going to ask them so many questions. And after several months, because I'm a hard sell, I'm not an easy sell. I do my homework. After several months, I went behind the barracks and I sat down to have it out with God. And I said, "This is how I understand it, God. I'm a sinner. I have no problem with that. Okay, you died for my sins." I went through the whole my understanding of the plan of salvation. And I said, based on how I understand this, I'm going to ask you to come into my life. I'm going to surrender my heart to you and be the Lord of my life. And then I said, if anything else comes into this after I say yes that I don't know about now, then the deal is off. That was my that was my prayer. I had to throw a right of rescission in there. Then the deal is off. And I sat there. I just for a moment, I said, Jesus Christ, come into my life. And then I opened my eyes and I said, okay, I'm going to believe it happened. And then I called all my drinking buddies and I said, hey, I just accepted Jesus Christ into my life. Let's go celebrate. And so we went to this gin mill, and it, in my naivete, and it's like, here's the Ferris asking Jesus into his heart. And I took one drink of my beer and I just spit it out. And I said, this doesn't taste right. And then I said, God, am I not supposed to be here now? And God just showed me, gave me some revelation as I looked around the room. God began to show me just the emptiness in the people's lives. And I just said, this is not the place for me anymore. And I got up and I walked out, and I've never looked back. And so that's what
Pause there,
started
pause
my.
there, pause there, doctor. My friends, I am talking to Dr. Michael Ferris. And the best part of, I mean, this is just gut wrenching story just to hear his journey. But the best part is coming up because he's a potter. We're gonna get to what makes him a potter, and he turns the pottery ministry into gospel preaching presentation with demonstration and scripture to back up. So you got to stay there and invite your friends to join us because this is going to be a fascinating journey. And I have a clip to play of a demonstration that you don't want to miss. So good time now to share, hit and share, because I mean I'm just intrigued about this story already and incredible. Um, so let me stick your point, Doctor Ferris. I want to ask you this question: Were you an ideologue? Are you a philosophically driven? What captured your imagination or your mind or your conversation? Were you ideological, or were you just philosophical, or just
With that
curious?
at that curious, you're at that place in my life. You're neither philosophical or ideological. You're pragmatic. It's like, what here and now, what's of value here and now, what's going to feed me here and now. You're not thinking about philosophy, you're not thinking about ideologies, you're just thinking about what's practical for me right now. And so this encounter that I had under the water, where I really felt that was God asking me where I would go now, that was like a pivotal moment in my life. That kind of got me on point, and I wanted to get the answer to that question. And so,
Did you ever think? Did you ever think in that moment that the your rejection of the other soldier preacher, who was always trying to get you to follow Jesus, did that come back in your mind when you were thinking this moment? Did you remember him saying to you that he was sure where he was going, but you weren't too sure?
no, no, I didn't think of him at all.
You did.
No, I just heard that voice. Where do you think you're going to go now? And it brought me to back to that moment where I wasn't so arrogant. But then of course, I did pursue that guy, that friend of mine, and I hammered him with questions, and I exhausted him with questions, and he knew his Bible, and he was a good resource, but uh, I just kept talking to people,
What was his reaction now that he realized that this guy who was kind of fending me off, he's now speaking my language, like Saul who became Paul, right?
Yes,
What
yes.
was his reaction to this complete conversion?
The conversion was a slow process. It wasn't like boom. I mean, it was,
I mean, but the
yeah.
conversation changed.
Oh
Your
yeah, the
whole attitude,
conversation
everything
changed.
changed.
Oh yeah, no, he was very excited, very excited. Very excited to bring me to Bible studies and very excited about that. But I was still very austere. I remember he brought me to started bringing me to this one Bible study. It was a college age group, and there were a lot of young adults there, and there was this one girl there, and she kind of had a shining for me. She kind of liked me. She wanted to connect with me. And I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested in anybody. I didn't trust anybody. You grew up in the street, you don't trust anybody. And just because you say yes to Jesus doesn't all of a sudden mean you start trusting everybody.
Not
And
automatically.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
remember going into this big potluck with all these people, and she was there, and she stands up in the middle of the room, and she calls out to me, and she says, "Hi, Mike." She goes, "Good to see you." And I just said, "Why? It's not good to see you."
Oh
And she
wow.
and she just sat down. It's like, leave me
Wow.
alone.
So
I
you
don't,
were
I don't
you were also cold.
cold. I had no conscience. I was a cold-hearted person.
Good
Yeah,
Lord.
it's like, yeah, that's it. I didn't want to be around people, right? And now just because I said yes to Jesus doesn't mean I want to still be around people. That didn't change. So
Transformation takes time. It's a progression. So
yes,
yeah, it's a gradual becoming more like Christ and understanding and changing my whole ways and
yes, when God
yeah,
talks about in Ezekiel taking a heart of stone and giving you a heart of flesh, it's a
yeah,
progressive thing.
yeah,
It's just not like that. Maybe for some people it is, but for me it wasn't. You
yeah.
know, and so anyway, yeah, life went on, and God used me. I didn't know it at the time, but I have like an evangelistic call because I started sharing Jesus with everybody. And of course, I was a diver, and divers have a lot of respect in the Navy. And you're not going to mess with a diver. You're not going to do that. And so I I wanted to have a Bible study. I didn't even read my Bible. I hadn't even read my Bible. So I mean, I read through it, but I didn't study it. But I thought I want to tell everybody about what happened to me. So
So you're like the woman at the well now. Come see a man, run tell everybody.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So at this one command where I was at, we had a diving locker, right? It was like the room where all the divers hung out. But you needed a secret clearance just to open the door to that room.
Wow.
So nobody could go in there. You had to be a diver to go in that room. And you had a big brass plate on the outside of King Neptune. And when people would walk by that door, if a diver was going in or out, everybody would peek and they'd want to look inside because they'd want to see. They had all this like science fiction stuff inside of there, all this cool stuff that you'll never see or know about, right? And so I wanted to have a Bible study. And I thought, how can I get people to come? Where am I going to have a Bible study? So I put an announcement out that I'm going to have a Bible study in the diving locker because I knew people would come because they'd want to be in the diving locker. They want to see what's there because it was so cool. The place was packed. I had to sit up on the counter because it was standing room only. And I'm going to have me a Bible study. I didn't even know my Bible. So I had some tracks. And then the first Bible study I led, I spoke out of the Book of Concordance. And then I read some, and and then I read some tracks. but but people got saved.
Well, that was just was a zeal without knowledge, or just zeal and top of
Yeah,
zeal.
yeah. So anyway, so God used me in a tremendous way in the military. I led so many people to Jesus, and so
Wow.
yeah. So then I got out of the military. I was discharged from the military, and then I started working in construction when I first got out, and then I wanted to go to school. So this is a whole other story. I don't want to. We'd be here all night, and so then I went to school. I wanted to study human behavior. I wanted to understand why people did the things they did. And I think at a deeper level, I wanted to understand why they did them to me. Why life was so cruel in my early life. And and so I began to study psychology, and then I began to study marriage and family therapy. And, both of those things kind of relate to my own,
Mm.
the woundedness in my own soul.
Wow.
And so I went on and I accomplished quite a few things academically, and I earned a PhD in counseling psychology and then a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And so then I worked at a hospital for a little bit, but it was interesting. This is so I worked at a hospital for a little bit in community mental health. And in community mental health, where I was working in this hospital, there's two cohorts of people that come through community mental health. One is just your average citizen, just somebody like you or I, that you live in the town and you're going through a challenging season and you want to get some counseling and you don't know where to go, and the town offers resources. So you go there and it's practically free because you pay taxes right in the town. That's one group of people. The other group is the chronically mentally ill.
Mhm.
We used to have what they would call state mental hospitals in Connecticut. They eliminated those. They put people in residential houses so as not to stigmatize them, and then they would get vouchers to come to community mental health. They use up their vouchers, and then they can't come until the next allotment. So, long story short, I ended up seeing somebody from the community mental health. Um, And when I saw him on what was called the intake, the first session, I'm looking at his folder, and I said, "Look, you've been coming here for a long time. You've seen all these other clinicians, and they're all capable of helping you, but you're still coming for the same reason. So it's not working.
Mhm.
Whatever they're doing with you, it's not working. And I don't want to waste your time, and I don't want you to waste my time." I said, "Now, sometimes when people are up against something that's bigger than them, and it's not working, like your life right now, they call on a power higher than themselves. They'll call on God." And I said, "Now I know that you believe in God because I've heard you ask him to damn several things since we've been together. I'm just wondering if instead of asking God to damn the things in your life, if you ask him to bless the things in your life, ask him to help you." And he's like, "No." So I share the gospel with him and I lead him to Jesus, right? So now I'm praying with him and I'm praying with my clients. And then one day I get called into the office and the director says, "Mike, we understand you're praying with your clients." And I said, "Yes, I am." And I said, it's a fantastic intervention. We need to do an in-service. I can teach everybody how to pray with their clients." And they said, "No, Mike, you can't do that. If you do that, we're going to fire you." And and so anyway, we had a little discussion around that. And they said, "We don't care if you do it, we're going to fire you." So I'm driving home and I'm all fired up. And I'm talking to God, and I said, "God, I am not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. For to me, it's the power of God unto salvation to everybody who believes, to the Jew, to the Greek, to the depressed, to the bipolar, to the schizophrenic, to everybody who believes. I'm not going to have somebody tell me I can't share my faith." So through a series of events, I ended up quitting. I came in the next day, I gave them my notice, and I started a private practice.
Mm.
While I was in my private practice, through a series of God events, God led me in the development of a treatment model for post abortive healing, women who have had abortions and have not healed from that wound. Statistically, 3 out of 5 women have had an abortion. 73%, roughly 3 out of 4, will suffer psychologically or emotionally. 20% will manifest enough symptoms to make them eligible for a diagnosis of post traumatic stress disorder. And there is no clinical model that addresses this as an issue to help women heal. So anyway, I ended up developing this treatment model, and then it led to a lot of speaking about it, and I wrote some papers, and I was on several radio programs. That led to an invitation to be a guest lecturer at the Alliance Graduate School of Counseling, which was part of the graduate program of Nyack College there
Mm.
in Nyack, New York, right?
Mhm.
So I went and I spoke there. They liked me. They offered me a job as a partnering faculty. And so I'm there teaching, and I'm teaching, several different classes. Okay, so in the meantime, that's my professional life. In my personal life now, I have 4 children. I have 4 daughters. And when they were little, I was very intentional to do daddy-daughter things with each one of my children.
How,
Something
d- how,
just,
d- how, did, how did you get to the mother? How did the mother come in?
how did the mother come in?
And the mother got to be there before the children.
Yes. Yeah, oh, she was there before the children. Yeah. Yeah, she was there for quite a while before the children. Yeah. Yeah. So,
How did you run into her? What was the story there?
okay, how did I run into her? Well, where I was living at the time, I was living in Mystic, Connecticut. I bought a house there and I was living there. And at that time, I played the guitar, and
Okay,
I
okay.
was I was leading worship in the church that I was going to.
See, we missed that part completely.
Well, it would take days, brother. So so I'm playing I'm leading the worship, and there was a pastor from several towns over. He was on vacation, and he came to the church, and he saw me playing, and he came up to me after, and he said, "Hey, listen, we have a coffee house in our church, and I'd like you to come and play music for us." So I went to that church, played music, and they liked me. They asked me to come back, and when I came back, I met a guy there. We kind of became friends, and he was involved in the singles ministry in his church, and he was doing a gathering at his parents' house, and he asked me if I would come and play music, and so I came. And when I was there, I walked into the house, and I see this girl, and she took a Maxwell coffee can out of the oven, and she shook it over the table, and out dropped a big loaf of zucchini bread. And I thought, any girl that can make zucchini bread in a Maxwell House coffee can is somebody I want to meet. And so I I walked over and said, "My name is Mike." And so
Unlike the one you had no interest in, this one now piqued your interest.
that's right. Well, a long time had transpired since then, and God broke a
You
lot of the
so you
fallow
became
ground.
human now. Now you become human.
Yes, yeah,
Okay, all right,
believe me, I
oh my
became
God,
human.
oh my
God
goodness.
broke the fallow ground to my heart. And so, yeah, I met her, and last month we celebrated our 42nd anniversary, wedding
Good for
anniversary.
you. Good for you.
So we've been around, we've been together for a while. A couple
Good for
years,
you.
we dated a couple years before that. Um, okay, so so uh, so I'm
Four children. Okay, go ahead now.
doing daddy daughter things with my girls. So with one of my girls, we were taking some pottery lessons together.
Hmm.
And we took about a half a dozen lessons together. And then the person who was teaching us couldn't teach us anymore. But I liked it. And so I wanted to keep doing it. So I bought a wheel, a potter's wheel, and I just kept practicing what I had learned. And so that's my personal life. In my professional life, I had a full-time counseling practice, clinical practice, and then I'm teaching at the graduate school. So this is going on in my professional life, and I'm traveling, and I'm doing speaking about psychology things and marriage things. And so my personal life, I'm home and I'm practicing pottery. And one one day I'm practicing, and I'm thinking of the order of operations in making a pot, and how you can't skip a step. You can't go step one, two, four.
Right,
If you don't do step three, step four doesn't happen.
right.
And as I'm thinking about that, all of a sudden, God spoke to me, and He said, "Michael, you understand this order of operations as it relates to clay, but don't you realize this is exactly what I'm doing in your life as I'm fashioning your life into the plans I have for you?" And as I sat there, God brought me through this life review, like from when I was a little kid, going through all the trauma, all of the abuse, all of the loneliness, all of that mess, all the military, right up to that moment in
All
time.
the rejection.
Yep. And God said, "Michael, if you give this to me, not just in word, how people will say, 'Jesus, take my broken life,' but then they don't let Jesus do anything with their broken life." He said, "You give me all of your mess, all of your brokenness, and I'll do with your life the same thing I did with Joseph, Jacob's son. I'll use it for the saving of many lives." And when I got that revelation, I said, "Okay, God, I'm going to give it to you all. I'm going to give you all of my shame, all of my guilt, all of my mess. I'm going to give it to you." And then I said, "Just don't hurt me with it. Just don't hurt me with it." Because I don't want to have to go back and look at any of that mess any more than anybody else wants to go back and look at the mess. But you know what? God doesn't do that. The Bible says love covers. The
Mhm.
devil is the accuser of the brother. The devil will bring that up in your
He'll bring
face.
it up. Yeah.
That's right. But when you know what they say, when the devil reminds you of your past, you remind him of
Remind him
his
of his
future.
future. Yeah.
That's it, right? And so I after that I just broke down and I just wept. I sobbed like a baby, and I just
So you didn't aspire.
no,
You didn't aspire to become a potter.
no, no,
Was it so your daughter wanted to become a potter, and then
no.
so how did you just kind of all randomly say we're gonna do potter's lesson?
Well, she was very tactile. She's always, doing puzzles and stuff with her hands. So I wanted to
Okay.
find something she could do with her hands, and I thought pottery. So
Okay.
she liked it. So we took some lessons, but I kept going with it because I really liked it. And so I mean, she was done. She was off playing. I mean, she's a little girl, and so I'm still doing this. And so when I had that encounter with the Lord, I broke down and I just wept and wept. And then when I was done, I was teaching a class on spiritual formation for
Mm,
counselors.
mm,
And one of my philosophical assumptions, okay, so now I'm a little more philosophical. One of my philosophical assumptions is if you're going to be effective as a counselor, then you have to counsel out of your own place of brokenness and not out of a book, because
mm,
anybody can read a book and parrot back what the book says. But if you haven't taken that healing journey yourself, you're not going to know what to do with your clients when
mhm,
you bring them to places you've never been, and you're going to hurt them, right? So I thought, I got to show this to my class because this is what my class is all about. So I brought my wheel into my class. Now this is a master's level class. I had about 25 adult students. So you'd have been in my class, you'd be a representative sample of my class.
mhm,
And so I said to the class, now these classes are 3 hours and 15 minutes long. So I've got you for a while. So I brought my wheel and a bunch of clay and I said, look, class, forget the syllabus. God showed this to me about my broken life this week. And now I want to show it to you about yours. And I just started making pottery. And I'm talking out loud and I'm talking about what I'm doing. And then I would say to one of my students, I'd say, okay, David, remember that thing that happened to you when you were little? Can you see how God used that in shaping your life? And now you're pursuing a degree as a counselor. Debbie, remember that thing that happened to you that you shared happened to you when you were little? Now you're pursuing a degree as a counselor. Over the Holy Spirit showed up in that class and the place was a wreck. I mean, people just started weeping at their desks. It was so powerful. And so I go home, right? Driving up the merit there, and I'm thinking it worked. I'm going to write this into the syllabus, do it every semester. A couple of days later, I get a call from this man, and he says, kind of assertive in his voice. He goes, "Is this Dr. Ferris?" I said, "Yes, it is." He says, "Well, my wife," he tells me her name. "My wife is in your class." And I said, "Yes, I know your wife. She was a girl about 50 years old." He says, "She came home from your class the other day really shaken up, and she hasn't been the same." And then he says, we pastor a little church. I didn't know this. Her husband was a pastor. And he says, we pastor a little church in the southern part of our state. Would you come and do the same thing for our people? And I said, okay. So I went to his church and brought my wheel. I didn't know what I was going to say or do. I just started making clay, talking to people, and the Holy Spirit showed up and people were crying. And then a few days later, I got a call from another guy. You were at a buddy of mine's church. Would you come to my church? And so it was at the end of the semester, towards the end of the year. So I wasn't paying attention. I was probably in a half a dozen churches, right? By the end of the year. But people started to call me for the next year. And I thought, I'm going to write it in my book. I wonder how many people will call. I wasn't advertising or anything. I was in 33 churches the next year, 43 churches the year after that. The third year, I was in 65 churches. That's more than once a week. The fourth year, 63 churches, more than once a week. At the same time, I'm developing the message, asking God to help me turn this into a healing message, an evangelistic message. I had a full-time practice. I'm still teaching and I'm doing these services. And I get this fire in my bones. And it's like everybody in the world has got to see this message. Everybody in the world. People are coming to faith in Christ because it's so relatable. How God can take a broken life like broken clay and restore it into something beautiful. And then one day I came out of a session, a clinical session with a client, and God stopped me in my tracks. And I just heard him speak so clearly to me. And he said, what are you doing? You work so hard for things that have no eternal value. He said, give your life to this and I'll provide for you.
Wow.
Yeah, that was really scary.
Wow.
So talked with my wife, sought some counsel, fasted, prayed, did the whole thing. Then I decided I closed my practice. I went to seminary and I got a second master's degree in church development, which is all about spiritual formation. That's what I'm all about. Yeah, all about spiritual formation. I eventually stepped down from teaching. I set it up as a 501c3, so it's a nonprofit parachurch ministry. So we come alongside other churches or Christ honoring organizations or just people who want to host an event. And this year marks my 15th year of doing it full time. So I've been doing it full time for 15 years now. It's been translated into 2 languages. I've toured with it in 10 countries. It's been on cable television channels. It's been on national TV in the Caribbean. Millions of people have seen it. We have DVDs that are all over the world. A couple of years ago, I had 2 people come up to me at the end of a service. One was in Pennsylvania and one was in Massachusetts. And they said to me, I want you to know I gave my life to Jesus after watching your DVD in prison. And
Wow.
so I know they're using it. They're using it all over. I've been in prisons. I've been in schools. I've been in the park. I've been in ghettos. I've been in house churches. I've been in apartment buildings up on the 10th and 20th floor in New York City. Wherever I get an invitation, I take this thing. I've been out in the street. It's unbelievable. And thousands of people have come to faith in Christ through it.
My friends, I'm talking to Dr. Michael Ferris. And in a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you about 8 minutes of what he's talking about.
Mm.
And if that doesn't capture you and captivate your heart, then maybe you don't have one. Right? Maybe you don't have one. And by the way, if you ever wanted him to come to your church and do the demonstration and preach the
Mhm.
gospel and bring hope and healing, that's what he does now. 15 years, he's giving up his professional
Practice.
practices
Yeah.
to commit his life to this ministry of pottery, bringing the gospel of salvation and hope. I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready. I'm getting ready to show this clip. So you need to tell everybody to come. I'm going to play this clip. So now you're triggered into it. You're gone 15 years into it. This is what your life is now, and you have traveled 10 countries, you say, around the world, or
Mhm,
and
mhm.
and God knows how many times you have done this.
Yes, and it's a real blending of both my psychology and my theology. And you can see it, you can see it
Yeah,
as you watch the whole
yeah.
message. And people can watch it on the website too. You can find it on YouTube, or you can go to the website, journeytothepottershouse.com, and connect with me there.
All right. Having said that, my friend, I'm going to see if I can play that clip for you now. So stay right there. Let me see if I can pull it up and play it, and hope you will be a blessing to you. Stay right there. Let me get this in the position. Let me go get this.
Now, when a potter is going to make something on their wheel, the first thing they have to do is they have to go out and dig up some clay. Now, when a potter goes out looking for their clay, do you know where they look for it? They look for it in the swamp. They look for it in and around the wetlands. Now, when a potter goes out looking for their clay, they're not looking
Is
for
there no
clay that's
sound?
going to be perfect. It's got to be just perfect.
The sound is
And do you
going
know
on.
why the potter does not go out looking for perfect clay? Because the potter knows there is no such thing as perfect clay. You see, the potter knows when they dig this clay up out of the swamp, it's going to have all sorts of muck and all sorts of mire and all sorts of junk inside of it. And the potter understands that dealing with all that junk that's inside the clay, that's just all part of the formation process. And now the way this process looks is you simply put your clay on your work surface and you push down on it. You like that, and you squish it, and you push it forward because you're trying to stretch it. And then you roll it back on itself, and you twist it, and you drive it down into itself and through itself. And you're going to continue this process until this clay has been prepared. If this clay could talk to me as I'm taking it through this crisis moment here, what do you think this clay would be saying to me right about now? Yeah, it'd be saying, ow, stop, potter, that hurts me. Why, if you were really a loving potter, you wouldn't be letting this happen to me. That's what it would be saying, because this is a really painful process for the clay. But if I, as the potter, If I could talk to this clay in a way that the clay could understand me, you know what I would say to this clay in response to its cries of pain and protest? I would say, clay, I know the plans I have for you. But once the clay's been ready here, we're going to take it over and we're going to put it on the wheel. Let's see if we can make something with it. Now that the clay has been centered, it's ready for the next phase, and that is we're going to open it now. The way the potter opens the clay is you take your fingers and you're going to plunge them right into the heart of this clay. And then you're going to draw this clay open. Now, this is a very intimate time between the potter and the clay. This searching out process, it reminds me of the heart of the psalmist. Listen to what the psalmist prays in Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. He prays, "Search me, O God, and know my heart." And then you're going to begin this process of drawing the clay upward. And this is a process. And like any process, it takes time. This process here reminds me of James chapter 4, verse 10. Humble yourself before the Lord, and he will lift you. And we can see the work that's taking place on the inside of the clay. We can see it by the way it's reflected on the outside of the clay. Now look at this. Is exactly how God works. God works from the inside out. Religion works from the outside in. Yeah. A vessel of honor right here. Come on, church. Yes. Amen. Now, if I want to use this clay for the potential for which I have just destined it, I got to take it through a few more stages. The first thing I have to do is I have to set its potential. Now, the way the potter sets the clay's potential is I have to take this clay now and I must put it into the fire. But when this thing comes out of the fire, it's going to look like this. See, fire has a way of purifying things, doesn't it? Fire gives strength to things, doesn't it? This pot's got a song now. You read the second half of Daniel chapter 3, verses 24 and 25, and you will discover that as you are faithful to God going through your fire, God has a way of showing up in the middle of your fire. And when you come out of that thing, and you're going to come out, listen, friend, your life's going to have a song. I let this piece dry out. See, this is the person who's dried out spiritually. So what does that mean for this clay now? Does that mean that this clay is now hopeless? No, this clay isn't hopeless. This clay is just hard. You know what happens to clay when it dries out? It gets really brittle. I'm going to take this dry clay and I am going to break it. Here, you see this clay here? This clay here, this is the person who loves God. They love the potter. There's a little pebble. Look, I'm going to stick it in the clay. Okay, so this is a wound in this person's life. Maybe this person was molested when they were little. Maybe they went through a painful divorce. Maybe they were abandoned when they were little. That's one of my wounds. Now, I'm going to tell you 3 reasons why it is so important that you heal from that wound that's in your soul. And so here you are. This is you. You're limping through your life, trying to do the best you can, trying to love Jesus, be a good person. And then one day, when you least expect it, your life comes crashing down around you. And you sit here in your brokenness, and you sit here in your confusion, and you say, God, why me? Why me, God? Why me? Did your life ever look like this? And you finally cry out to God and you say, God, help me. I'm tired of trying to control everything and everybody. God, help me. And God, who the Bible tells us in Psalm 46:1, he is a very present help in our time of trouble. God, he comes along and he picks you up. Oh, he picks you up. He picks up your broken life. with all of your guilt, all of your shame, all your addictions, all your messed up relationships. He picks up your broken life and he carries you over to his special place. And there he's going to dry your tears. And then he's going to start to bring you through a process of getting your life put back together again. And then, when the Father is ready, he's going to take your life, a life that was once so broken, and he's going to put you back on the wheel. But he puts all of you on the wheel. All of you. Because God wants all of you. He's going to begin to lift you. Once again, he's going to lift you. The potter never gives up on the clay. So God lifts you up out of your brokenness. And he gives you a calling. And then he's going to do something with your life. He's going to give your life a calling. And then he's going to give your life an equipping. Why does he do this? He does this so that you can now take from your broken life and you can pour from your broken life into the life of another broken person, so you could bring them into a relationship with the potter so they can find healing for their broken life just like you found for yours. Come on, that's the gospel right there.
Wow. 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 I can't get enough of that. I can't get enough of that. It is so powerful. It is so profound. It is so real. It is so relatable.
Mhm.
And my friends, that's only the trailer. If you notice, I did was clipping. That's just a trailer. That's not the whole story. As you can see that, but I'm sure that it must say something to you. I'd like to hear from some of those who are watching. What was your reaction to that? Give us a little bit more insight into that, Dr. Ferris. I mean, I'm captivated by that, and I'm captivated by especially the last part where the brokenness
Mhm.
and your messed up life and
Yes.
your
Yes.
emotions and your wounds
Yes.
from and the wounds come from so many areas in our lives:
Yes.
broken relationships, marriage, fail, children, family, church. I mean,
Yes.
brokenness comes from so many directions.
Yes.
And sometimes our own guilt or our own consciences make us
Mhm.
feel like we are worthless and God
Mhm.
has no more use for us.
Yes.
But you put that into perspective in such a and by the way, the skills of causing that clay to break in the many pieces that you had it's so deformed.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I'm reading into that in so many ways
Oh,
that is
yes.
so real. And I'm thinking of people can look at themselves and
Mhm.
say, that's exactly where I was, how I was. And I never thought God could put me back together again.
Amen.
And I'm going to give you a chance to comment, but I heard one of my favorite preachers a long time ago made a quote of a preacher, and he says, this preacher said, "It is no telling what God can do with our broken hearts if we give Him all the pieces."
Mhm. Mhm. Beautiful.
Sometimes we don't give Him all the pieces.
That's right. That's right.
I'm giving it now to the potter.
Yeah. Well, that's there's so many layers to this. There's so many layers to this illustration, and like sometimes, like I will do church retreats or workshops, and I'll bring it in several layers. Where we'll do a section of it, and then we'll break out. We'll have questions, this sort of thing. But there's so many things that are important that I try to convey. And first, that you were born on purpose and for a purpose. Your life's not a mistake, right? And then this idea that when the potter goes out looking for their clay, they look for it in the swamp. That's where they look for it.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as synthetic clay. It's not. It's the clay is a natural resource. It's as old as the earth. When God said, let there be, there was clay. And when the potter goes out looking for clay, he doesn't look for clay that's perfect, because there's no such thing as perfect clay. So the potter understands, when they dig the clay up out of the swamp, like you saw in that brief little clip there, he knows that that clay is going to be filled with muck and mire and sticks and twigs and bugs and leaves, all sorts of junk. And and dealing with all of that, that's all part of the formation process. And this is an important thing to convey, because sometimes I talk with lots of people, and sometimes people will tell me that they really would like to have a relationship with the Lord, but they don't feel they're ready to do that now. And when we explore their reasoning, why they don't feel they're ready to do that now, it always seems to come down to they just don't feel good enough to have a relationship with the Lord, because they're still struggling with junk in their life. Maybe they're struggling with an addiction, or they got a habit they can't control. Their marriage is a mess. Their kids are out of control, or they've got some people in their life that they know are not good for them. And so they don't feel good enough to have a relationship with the Lord. But the good news of the gospel is that God isn't looking for you to be good enough.
Hmm.
If we had to be good enough before we came to Christ, we would never come to Christ.
Never.
He's just looking for you to be willing. You'd be willing to take that step and say yes. So that's an important piece. And then I want people to see the hope in this message, because God can take the potter never gives up on the clay.
Mm.
And if you watch the whole formation process, the potter never takes his hands off the clay. Even when it's falling apart, he's holding on to it, and he's supporting it. And it doesn't matter how messed up your life is, uh, God can put you back together again. And the beautiful thing too, that you didn't see it there. There's only so much time, but you saw the squiggly line
Hmm.
that was on that one pot. That's a scarring. And that's literally what I've done. I scarred the pot. But
I saw that was deliberate to make it fall
yes,
apart. I saw that.
yeah. No, well, the scarring part, what happens is, people think it looks pretty, but they don't realize it's a scar. And then the idea is, when you glaze it, the glaze breaks over the scar and it accentuates it. So
Mm.
the scar that was once a symbol of pain and brokenness in the life of this pot or person, now that it's glazed, it becomes a focal point of beauty. And it actually, when people pick up a pot that's scarred, the first thing they do is they touch it. They touch the scarred pot on the pot. The scar connects. People connect with the scar, and it's like the brokenness in our life. When we give the brokenness in our life to Jesus, doesn't matter how messed up your life is, doesn't matter how many mistakes you've made or how far gone you think you are. You're never far gone. You're never too far gone for the potter. God takes those broken things. It's part of the mystery of the cross, but he turns them into something beautiful. And they become the contact points where other people will connect with you in your life. And God brings people into your life that meet you in that broken place. And why does God do it? And he does it not so you could sit around and have a victim talk. He does it so you can point them to the one where you found healing for your broken life, so they can find healing for their broken life. It's so beautiful. And so I just really want to encourage people, doesn't matter, how the mistakes you've made, the guilt, the shame, the things you've done, God knows it. And he's still calling you. He calls you to himself, and he wants you to give him a chance, and he'll put your life together. Not only will he put it together, but he'll ultimately end up fashioning it in such a way that it's going to be used for his glory. Because God will never waste your suffering if you give it to him.
My friends, again, I'm talking to Dr. Michael Ferris, and I'm sure I see a couple of reactions on just watching that. And this ministry that he goes around to
Mhm,
churches and communities, and he
mhm,
does a presentation. You get the whole full thing, not just this little clip of the trailer. But if you want him to come to your church or your event or your
mhm.
community to do this presentation, he'd be more than happy to do it. His connection is a journey to the Potter's house. He's on YouTube and on the website as well, right? A Journey to the Potter's House is your website.
Yes, a journey
So
to
my
the
friend,
potter's
at
house.com.
journeytothe.pottershouse.com, one word, no spaces, at journeytothe.pottershouse.com. You can find Dr. Ferris, or you can contact me,
Mhm.
and I link you up with his phone number, so you can invite him down or up or across or wherever you are in
Yes.
this country or anywhere in the world. He goes out of the country as well. He goes to Caribbean locations as well. So
Hmm. Hmm.
I am moved by this, and this to me is like Jesus speaking using parables and giving us the clear example that
Hmm.
that a man can relate to. You can
Yes.
understand the natural to get the spiritual. Because when I went to Bible Institute, the first time I went to Bible Institute, one of the things that captivated me, Dr. Ferris, was when I did archaeology and geography.
Hmm.
Archaeology and geography brought my Bible to life
Yes, absolutely.
and made it make more sense to me. I could relate to it, like it's not something in some atmosphere, somewhere on some space. It was actually on earth, natural, real people. So I was able
Yes.
to relate to that. Looking at that example, that demonstration, that is just captivating. And I'm sure I am not surprised of how people got healing
Oh,
and find
yes.
hope
Yes.
and
Yes.
find their lives restored into
Yes.
something beautiful when they thought the pieces were too far gone, they couldn't be mended. I,
Hmm.
I just imagine people see themselves coming back together again. That is
Oh,
just
yeah. It's beautiful.
incredibly,
And
incredibly.
it doesn't matter where you are in your walk with the Lord. You can be unsaved and see it and you'll relate to it. You could be walking with the Lord for 50 years and you can relate to it. You can just be a young Christian and you can relate to it. Because one of the things that joins us all together is our pain,
Mm.
our brokenness. If I took a basin and cried all of the tears I've ever cried in my life into this basin, and then I gave it to you, and you cried all the tears you've ever cried in your life into that basin, and we passed it around to people, we wouldn't be able, once that basin was filled with tears, we wouldn't be able to look in there and say, oh, those are Orville's tears,
Yeah.
those are Mike's tears, those are her tears, those are his tears, because pain and brokenness, it can unite us instead of divide us. And so, and Christ brings healing there. It's transformational, really.
And as you said it, I remember in my doing my chaplaincy residency as well. I went into a room where it was a Muslim. I share this story a couple of times. It was a Muslim, and then there are two perceptions of a chaplain coming into your room in a hospital. One, either they're coming to proselytize you, or are they coming to read your last rites? So
Yeah, yeah.
those are two
Okay.
two perceived notions of a chaplain coming in. Either coming to read your last rites or coming to proselytize you. So I walked into this guy's room. He had his Quran and his right there beside him. And so he thought the chaplain walking, I was coming to tell him about Christianity or to whatever. And so he had his guards up.
Mhm.
And I walked and I said, no, no, listen, I didn't come to talk to you about religion. I want to find out how you're doing. So let's put religion aside, because religion may be here and may not be here. But if we put religion aside, we all become, let's be human first.
Yes,
Because if we now become human, we have all things common.
yes, yes.
Put away religion, we are just human. We feel the same pain, we feel the same struggles. And I remember him saying to me, wow, I never heard it like that.
Mm.
He
Yes.
dropped he dropped his guard down.
Hmm.
Religion was out the door, and I was able to talk to him about how he was doing.
Yes, yes.
And as you say, if we put all our tears in, nobody will be able to identify which tears were yours,
That's right.
because we have all those things in common: brokenness and pain and struggles and heartaches. We all have those in common. And so
Yes.
we're able to relate to each other. That is just beyond my human comprehension, but I can relate to it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a transcendent thing.
Well, Sister Elaine, you missed the whole of this program. You got to go back and watch it from the start, because I can't even tell you what it is. You have to go back and watch it. Oh my God, Dr. Ferris, I'm sure another time I would love to have you to talk, because it's just incredible, incredible, incredible to hear your own story,
Mm.
which I only heard a fraction, but because I didn't know what to expect, I don't know what I haven't heard.
Okay.
I can only use my human imagination to say, yeah, there is a lot to that story that I haven't heard, but that's okay. That's okay. What else do you want to tell us about this ministry? Your projection. Where do you see it going? And tell us something about the ministry now.
Well, where we're at now, we're just continuing to spread the gospel. We're working on getting it translated into some other languages, and the ministry is broad. I mean, people know me for the pottery illustration, A Journey to the Potter's House, but we also do workshops and trainings. Like integrating my psychology and theology. I do, a workshop. I call it a counseling model for people in ministry. I do another training for post-abortive counselors, teaching people this model to help women who have aborted children to heal from that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and not to cut you, but that appealed to me as well. Although I'm not in the same field of a woman, I'm not a woman, so I don't know. But the fact that what you said about that at the beginning, maybe you could just repeat that little part that you talk about the impact of abortion, whether it is deliberate or crisis or something happened. The statistics that you talked about it, the percentage then of women who struggle, even if they did
yes.
it, they wanted to do it, but they still struggle. Give me a little bit of insight back into that again.
Well, and now they have the abortion pill, so the statistics are off the charts. But before that, statistically, 3 out of 5 women have had an abortion, and 73% of them, so that's approximately 3 out of every 4 women who've had an abortion, they'll suffer psychologically or emotionally, and certainly relationally because of that abortion, and they do not know that going into it. And the number one feeling that exit surveys tell us that women feel after an abortion is a feeling of relief. And it's not until sometime later to where they begin to deal with the fallout, the actual emotional fallout of that. Of that 73%, 20% of those women will manifest enough symptoms to make them eligible for diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder. And so, they suffer in a lot of ways. They develop eating disorders, substance abuse disorders, issues in relationships, even issues with parenting. And
Mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
the fallout of it is very far reaching. But the good news, the really good news, is that Jesus can forgive and Jesus can heal. And I had mentioned earlier that in my clinical practice, I had ended up developing a treatment model that addresses this as a clinical issue because there is no treatment model. There's Bible studies out there, but they're not enough. They're Bible studies, but they're not enough. And I actually, when I was teaching at the graduate school, they knew the work that I was doing in this area. I actually became known as the go-to guy in New England. I'm considered an expert in this area in post-abortive healing. And they asked me to write this model that I developed into a curriculum. And I did, and they brought it before the New York State Board of Regents and the New York State Department of Education, and they awarded it 3 graduate level credits. So it's the only class like it in the world that I know of.
Wow.
Yeah, that offers
Wow.
academic credit for training in this. So I've taken that model and I've developed a training for post-abortive counselors. So if you're at a church and you have a women's ministry and you want to be able to help have a healing ministry for women who've had abortions to heal from that, you want to take this workshop. And it'll teach you this model and how to come alongside a post-abortive mom and just help her find healing from this wound to her soul. So yeah, it's tremendous. It's tremendous. There's nothing like it.
Whew. Well, my friends, you heard it from Dr. Michael Ferris. He's got it on both sides. He's combined his clinical practice with his theological practices and is putting the psychology and the emotions and everything tied into the potter's ministry. What a combination. That's a whole
Yes.
package. So he
It's a
has
whole package.
That's a whole
Yeah.
package, right? That's a whole
Yes.
package.
Yeah.
You get you get two or three or four in one. You know, two, three, four in one. That's incredible. That's incredible,
You
man.
know,
I am so thankful for you to join me. I have learned a lot tonight, and on my emotions, and my relatability to the brokenness. I'm still seeing that shattered, out of shape clay. I'm still seeing that in my eyes, in the eye, in the mind, in my mind's eye. I'm still seeing that, but to see how God still mold it and put it back on the wheel,
yes.
and the biblical truth, the biblical truth
Yes.
about that. I am just hoping that somebody watching this or watch this after we're finished will find hope and healing
Yes.
and
Amen.
know that the potter never gives up on the clay. It might
Amen.
not be exactly what he intended at first, but he will still make something beautiful out of it.
Something that goes beyond your wildest imaginings.
Wow. Wow. What's your last word, Doc? If you want to say something, what's your last word? On the side of hope, what's your last word to somebody who is hurting, broken relationship, wounded life? What's
Yes.
your last word to somebody?
Yeah. My last word, would be the potter never gives up on the clay. God will never give up on you. So don't you give up on you, and don't you give up on God either. So you just open your heart, give God a chance, and listen. If you're struggling with something and you just want to process it a little bit more, you can reach out to me through the website. You go onto a journeytothepottershouse.com, and there's a contact us link there. And that comes right to my desk. Nobody else sees that. And I'm happy to talk to you and correspond with you. I actually correspond with people all over the world. And with media now, we will have FaceTime counseling sessions and things like this. And just thinking of the abortion piece, just this kind of came to me. January, we're almost at the end of the year, we're almost in January. Um, Within the sanctity of human life, January is considered the sanctity of human life month,
Hmm.
and I have a beautiful teaching that I bring to churches that would have me come to share this message on the sanctity of human life. And the idea behind this message is that all human life is sacred, including the life of the post-abortive mom, the woman who has aborted her baby. When we usually hear the term sanctity of human life, we're usually thinking of it
Only,
as it relates to
only,
the
yeah,
unborn or the
only,
aborted
yeah,
child.
yeah.
But I want to contend in this that the mom's life is still sacred, and God still has a plan and a purpose for your life as well. So as we're coming into January, if you're at a church and you'd like to have this message, just reach out. I'd love to come and share it with you. And I think it'll really, really bless you, bring a lot of hope.
My friends, you heard it from Dr. Michael Ferris. A journey to the pottershouse.com. You can find him on YouTube. You can find him on his own website. You can make connection with him. He'd be more than happy to come and share at your local church. It didn't have to be big. It
No,
could be small. It
I've
could
done little
be
house churches. I've gone to house churches with a half a dozen people, and I've been in churches of thousands. It's like mega churches. And so it doesn't matter. It just, if it's one person, because you know what I've learned is one person can make a difference. Can I share something? Just a thought in,
sure.
in closing. So I've gone to Peru 6 times, and I've done training for an organization that works with traumatized children. And when I first came to Christ, I was going to church, and I was sitting in the back of the church, and I was saying, God, I appreciate being saved, but I don't want to be like these people. I don't want to just come and sit in the church. I want my life to make a difference. I want my life to count for heaven. But I would think, what could I do? I'm just a kid that grew up in the street. What could I do? So as life had gone on, I'd accomplished some things, and I ended up doing some training for this organization in Peru. And one time when I was there, I met this man, and we were talking, and he spoke flawless English. And I'm thinking to myself, he's an educated man. Nobody masters a language like this without really being smart. So I asked him, what do you do for a living? And he said, I'm an engineer. And so I thought, okay, he probably travels the world, telling his engineering project. So I said, do you do a lot of traveling? And he says, no, I never left the country. I said, you never left the country? I said, you speak flawless English. I said, you don't even have an accent. And he says, well, I've studied it my whole life. He goes, but I have a brother that lives in the United States. And he said to me, where do you live? Now, I live in the state of Connecticut, right? And he goes, where do you live? And I'm thinking, okay, what does this man know about the geography of the United States? So I said, if you look at a map of the United States, you go to the right-hand side, the East Coast, divide it into 4 sections. Go to the top section. They call that New England. I live in a part of the country they call Southern New England. And he says, oh, my brother lives in a state called Connecticut. Right. So I'm thinking that's the state I live in. And he says, yeah, he lives in a town called West Hartford. Okay, that's about 25 minutes from where I live.
Oh
And
no.
so when he said that, and this is what I want to leave with you. This is what I want to leave with you. When he said that, I said to myself, I said, God, it's such a small world. And Orville, I heard God speak to me in my mind. And he said, that's right, Mike. It's a small world. And I am a big God. And when you serve a big God living in a small world, your life can make a difference. And so I grabbed onto that thing and I've never let it go. Come what may, my life's going to make a difference. And I want to speak that into your life and into the lives of everybody who's listening, everybody who's watching. You serve a big God living in a small world. So you hold on to Christ and your life can make a difference. Amen.
Absolutely. 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 My friends, this has been an intriguing conversation, an intriguing story about, oh my God. If you miss it, you got to go watch it. You got to go watch it from the start. His own journey as a young man and the experience of the encounter with Christ. I mean, God brought him up for this moment, for this reason, but he had to put him into a deep, dark place,
Mm-hmm.
a deep, dark place to turn him around. Like when he stopped Saul and said, he said, who art thou? He said, I am Jesus Christ, who you persecute. And it's hard to kick against the pricks.
Right.
And so that's where Michael Ferris was now becoming Dr. Ferris and the minister Potter who bring the gospel in a different way. God bless you, my friends. Thank you for joining us on this Let's Talk with the Doc. Everyone has a story, and if you have a story, you do have a story. And I'd love to talk to you about your own story. You might not even think it's a story until you start talking about it. All right. So, what I look to hear from you another time, email me at orbministries@gmail.com or follow me on Facebook, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'm even on TikTok with ORB Ministries. We're going to take it wherever the Lord allows us. So I'll see you next time on another Let's Talk with the Doc. And if you missed the program, as I close it out, you got to go back and rewind the tape. You got to preach. You got to go listen this story and start it from the beginning. And I hope that, and here's a good thing. One of the things that Christians don't do, we don't share. We don't share as much. The people in the world, they share every garbage, every foolishness. Christians take a look at this story, this program, and they just absorb it and say, oh my God, what an intriguing program, and they don't share it with anybody else. So they can't bring hope and healing to somebody else because they don't share it. Now, if you share with 10 people, chances are there might be one soul you might bring hope to. There might be one life you will change. And guess what? When you get to heaven, if you share this and bring healing and hope to somebody or salvation, when you get to heaven, there is a crown of rejoicing for you just by using that to bring life and hope to somebody else. So you got a mission now. Take it to another place. God bless you. I'll see you again next time on another Let's Talk with the Doc. Dr. Ferris, I am so excited to have you and thank you for sharing with me. And we're going to go off like we came on, but I hope that you will come back again another time. See you again, my friends. Well, thank you for checking in on ORB Ministries. I trust that you will share with your friends, subscribe, hit the bell for notification, and stay tuned because you never know what's next or who will join the conversation?